Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Hello and welcome to mini episode 400 of Real Life Ghost Stories, and I have 4 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from October the 7th, 2024, and story number 1 comes from Arlene. I wrote in previously about the man with no face on the A75 in Scotland that I saw with my friend. It's the same girl this time for the UFO. Maybe she or we are a paranormal magnet. A different road this time though. It was a year or two after the no-faced man, around 2002-2003. It was December and we were driving home after work. She was going to stay with me at my parents'. I was in my early 20s, still living at home. We were going to meet friends for a Christmas night out in my wee hometown of Lockerbie in Scotland. The road home from Dumfries to Lockerbie is the A709. And there is a straight before you go up the hill to drive through the village of Lochmaben. I noticed in the sky to the right what looked like a huge spinning star, and it looked like it was changing colour from silver to blue to green. I thought, okay, weird, must be a trick of the light or something, and carried on with our journey. Then, when we were on the next long open straight, and believe me, I know how ridiculous this sounds, this huge craft appears from the right, flying pretty low. I slowed down and there is a road end to the left for the Arla cheese factory. I pulled into and stopped the car. I got out and I watched this dark grey arrowhead triangle-shaped craft glide over above us. As always, my friend was unbelievably chill when it came to anything. As it was so slow moving, I got a really good look at it. It had a large white round light in the middle, and 3 round smaller circle white lights in a row on its tail, if you like. It didn't make a sound. It was completely silent. I rang my parents on my BT Brick first mobile phone and said, get outside now, there's something in the sky like a UFO and it's cruising towards Lockerbie. We got home and my parents were outside in the garden. My poor mum was cowering, holding on to the side of the house like she was trying to hide. They had also seen it, as it had glided over the house silently. I can't remember the exact conversation between us, but remember that Mum was terrified. Dad was just puzzled. I was ecstatic. I know, completely out of order when my mum was scared. I went into the garden, looking towards the bottom of the garden, and in the sky I could see the same large spinning star changing colour that I had first seen earlier. Then I clearly remember looking up and shouting, "Here it comes again!" And the dark triangle craft glided overhead again. At that point, the old Lockerbie Academy was still standing, which was right next door to our house, and it literally just missed the roof of the 4-storey main building. I remember this time seeing some detailing of metal bits and panels, a bit like the underside of the Millennium Falcon. Again, I absolutely know what it sounds like, but just saying what I saw. My parents went back indoors and my friend and I just watched it in amazement. We stayed outside for a while searching the skies. I remember my mum came back out and we were standing on the driveway still looking up, and the next thing in the sky was little white balls shooting about like they were in a pinball machine. I remember texting everyone I knew to get outside and have a look in the sky. Only a few others saw it. And my dad talked about it the next day with friends, and some of them had seen the same thing. Later that night, after my friend and I got ready, we walked down the street to the pub and I kept checking the skies. And along the skyline above the large hill that runs along the east side of Lockerbie, there it was again, the craft just cruising along. The next day I said to Mum that we should report it, but she said no, or we would look like we were making it up, or people would think of us as insane. I argued that other people saw it too, but I think she feared us being in the local paper. In hindsight, it was probably the right choice, or we'd have been the tinfoil hat family forevermore in our small town. And we still talk about it to this day. And I'll always say, right, the most common sense explanation is that it was something military, some sort of stealth craft. But that doesn't explain the spinning star or the wee white balls shooting about the sky, unless there's some weird thing the military had going on as well. But really, testing a low-flying large aircraft that flew around in circles over Lockerbie of all places in December, when the 1988 air disaster happened here in December, not really appropriate, but not beyond the realms of possibility. Mum always says, I don't know, but with it being so low, and with that huge light in the middle, I honestly thought we were going to be beamed up. And she thought because it was so slow, it had actually come to a stop over the top of the house. She laughs about it now, but it gave her such a fright at the time. Fast forward a few years, and in my late 20s I went back to uni as a mature student to study graphic design. Best decision I ever made. I still work for myself as a graphic designer to this day. Anyway, one project in my final year was to create an exhibition space based on a conspiracy theory. And I of course did mine on the topic of black triangles. Are they military or UFOs? And when doing my research, the amount of videos and accounts from all over the world of the black triangles was way more than I realised. I also saw one zoomed in video a man took in the Isle of Wight of the colour changing spinning star, and a couple of videos of the wee white balls shooting around the sky in the US and Mexico, one of them being during the day. What are any of them? Well, as it stands, we don't know. But I hope in my lifetime the military and or NASA will reveal all. Arlene, I hate what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it, and I don't know if I've ever spoken about this on the podcast before, but I have seen this too. First of all, just to say, I did not see this in the same detailed context as you did, Arlene. Like, what an amazing story, especially because you were like driving along, you see this thing, you ring your parents, you're like, fucking get outside and see this, and then you see it multiple times on the same night. You see this thing, whatever this thing is. And interestingly, I know that you're saying, why the heck would this be happening above Lockerbie if it was some sort of military training or operation? When I was in St. Augustus on Loch Ness, I went to visit Alistair Crowley's old house, Boleskine House, right? And the owners were so wonderful and brilliant and kind enough to show me around. But I'm not joking when I say, right, this place is in the middle of nowhere. I had to drive down the tiniest grass in the middle dirt track you've ever seen to get to it, praying that a car wouldn't come the other direction the entire time. This was middle of nowhere on the banks of the lake, forest all around, like remote. And next thing, we were standing in Alistair Crowley's magic room, which is a weird sentence in itself. And next thing, there was this roar, and I honestly have never heard anything like it. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And the owners of Boleskine House were like, oh, don't worry about it. They were like, it's military aircraft, just give it a second. And then there was this boom. Like, it was honestly like nothing I had ever felt before. Everything shook. I was like open mouthed going, what the heck? And they were like, oh, they're testing out their like speed aircraft and breaking the sound barrier. So of course immediately I was like trying to get outside to look up, and they were like, yeah, don't bother, it's long gone. That craft is gone. And it blew my mind, but they were just so like blasé about it. They were like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. So all that to say, military aircraft is actually tested out in remote Scotland. And I don't think in this story that there's any room for doubt that you have seen this. You know, when we talk about paranormal events and we say, oh, it might have been a trick of the light, or you might have had sleep paralysis or whatever. You, your friend, your mom, your dad, and other people in the area saw this multiple times on the same night. You saw it, you had the chance to digest what you were seeing, you saw it again after you saw it initially, you were able to ring your parents and say, get outside and look at this thing, it's coming towards you. So it happened. The question is not what happened, it's what did you see? And like I said, what I saw was much less sustained over a long period of time. It was almost like a blink and you miss it kind of moment. But it was about 10 years ago now, and I was leaving work. And the school that I worked in was out in the countryside, pretty remote as well. And in order to get to the car park where I parked my car for the day, I had to cross a road from the school to get to the car park. It was pitch black dark, which makes me think that it was probably winter time. And I was late leaving school, so I was the only one trekking across to the car park. And in some sort of moment of like cinematic glory, I was literally in the middle of the road. This was a country road, so there was no cars coming either side. I was in the middle of a country road and I heard this whoosh, and I looked up and there was this triangular grey black aircraft that flew over my head. And it was flying really low. It wasn't making the roar of an engine. It was like a silent whooshing sound as it like flew really quickly over me. And our school building was a big two-story building. It used to be an old library, but it wasn't this, whatever the fuck this was not flying much higher than the school building. And I honestly was just so caught off guard that I wasn't even freaked. I didn't even get frightened. And when you said in your story, Arlene, that you could make out like the metal kind of panels and stuff underneath, that honestly gave me goosebumps, because so could I. Whatever was on the underside of this, I could make out like kind of metal paneling and, different bits of metal all together to make up this aircraft. And I remember coming home to Dan and just being like, the fucking weirdest thing has just happened to me. But then I just put it aside and forgot about it. I just moved on, mostly because we are in an area of Kent where there are military bases around, and quite regularly when I was teaching, I used to teach in a 2-story prefab, and you'd hear the roar of the engines, and the fighter jets would be doing whatever they were doing around the air, and you'd hear them quite regularly, and my classroom would be like vibrating, and I'd have to stop what I was doing to wait for them to cross over, so that I could continue teaching or whatever it was I was doing. But, so it happened quite regularly. So I think in my head, I was like, this is obviously some sort of military craft that they are testing at night time, some sort of stealth craft. But this whole story has given me major heebie-jeebies. And just to be clear, I really don't think that the military would think twice about the Lockerbie disaster and how people might respond to a mystery aircraft circling around Lockerbie in December. I don't think the powers that be would even remotely consider that might be an issue. And I think it's always really important to remember that, during the Cold War, there was this spate of UFO sightings, and the government were like, yeah, it's definitely aliens. They encouraged the narrative that it was aliens because they didn't want Russia to find out that they were, testing military technology or whatever. So, look, I don't know. I'm not trying to be like a tinfoil hat person. I do think there's military weapons and stuff that are tested all the time that we just don't know about. And I think they're trying out new things all the time in terms of the military. And what is it they say that we will find out about it like 20 years later? Oh, that story has really given me the heebie-jeebies. And also is a testament to how stressful teaching is in the UK, because I could have been abducted and I would have been like, thank God, I get a bit of a break.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text. The long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever.
With millions of books on Amazon, there's a reading feeling for everyone. For example, Olivia's, after learning she has quite a lot in common with a 9th century Viking, is different to Luna's. After the old man narrowly escaped being bitten by zombies. which is also different to Jerome's, his eureka moment on finding the perfect new quote for his dating profile. From to Amazon Books. That reading feeling awaits.
So good, so good, so good.
Perfect gifts? We've got them at Nordstrom Rack stores now. UGG, Nike, Barefoot Dreams, Kate Spade New York, and more. Find everything on their wish list all in one place.
Steve Madden? Yes, please.
It's perfect.
Did we just score?
The greatest gifts of all time? Yeah.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to score. Great brands, great prices, the greatest gifts of all time.
The Black Death is coming for our Plantagenet heroes in the new season of This Is History, A Dynasty to Die For, with me, Dan Jones. It's the story of warrior king Edward III as he sets off on an epic journey that will change the course of history. First on the to-do list for young Edward, overthrow his mum's lover and chase a bishop down the shaft of a castle toilet. Join me, Dan Jones, on This Is History, A Dynasty to Die For, available wherever you get your podcasts.
And story number 2 comes from Shyra. I was laying in bed this morning watching TikToks when one of my dogs barked a couple of times at my open bedroom door. I was alone in the house minus my dogs, so got a little nervous that someone was in the house. I listened to too many podcasts, but didn't think anything more of it, other than sending a Snapchat about it. An hour later, my brother called me to tell me that my mom had passed away about an hour and a half before he called. I think my mom came to say goodbye. Shyra, I'm so sorry that you lost your mom, and I hope that her coming to visit you in that moment brought you some comfort during that time. I think it's quite a beautiful thing to think that, you know, in that moment she kind of came and stood at your door to see you before she went to wherever it is we go after we die. And thank you for sending in your story, because I know that there are a lot of people who will take great comfort and solace from hearing those things, because they will think, oh, that little weird thing that happened to me after my loved one died, maybe it was them coming back. And story number 3 comes from Amy. In the summer of 2003, I was working as a lifeguard at a summer camp in the rural southeastern US. Summer staff consisted of lifeguards and ropes course facilitators, and the counsellors rotated in and out on a weekly basis. Summer staff stayed throughout the summer and had male and female cabins at the camp. Aside from our lifeguarding and ropes course duties, one of our roles was to clean up the camp in the evenings and on weekends. Campers came to camp on Monday and left on Saturday morning. After the campers left, it was our job to deep clean the cabins and the lodge to prepare for the following week. The cabins were where older campers in middle and high school stayed, while the lodge was where elementary and intermediate school age campers stayed. This story takes place in the lodge, which was configured like a wheel. The assembly hall and the dining room were in the middle of the wheel, and the wings where the campers and counsellors slept were like spokes of the wheel, each separated from the central hallway by its own glass door with a pneumatic closer to prevent it from slamming. Another important thing to know about the camp was that it was about 75 years old at the time this story takes place, and had several ghost stories attached to it. But I will focus on one of the known haunts for now. Summer staff were supervised by one man, Mr. B, who had been at the camp for many years. He had taken over this task after the camp's founder, Mr. H, retired and eventually passed away from old age. Mr. B had been only the second or third person to occupy this role since Mr. H's passing. People who held this role, Mr. B and Mr. H included, loved the summer staff as if they were their own children. They expected us to work hard and have fun, but the working hard part was obviously the most important bit. At the beginning of the summer, Mr. B told us that Mr. H held this expectation still, even over 20 years after his passing. He also told us that Mr. H would let us know if we were not living up to his high standards. Obviously, this was a little disconcerting to some, but I thought it was more of a scare tactic than anything, despite knowing the ghost stories affiliated with the camp as I had grown up going to camp there. With that important background out of the way, Here's what happened to me and 3 other staff members. One Saturday, during my second summer working at the camp, we were doing our deep clean in preparation for the next week's campers. I was the lone female on cleaning duty with the other guys. I had just graduated college and was getting ready to go to grad school in the fall, while the other guys were either high school seniors or in their first or second year of college. So obviously there was a bit of a difference in maturity between myself and them. I was wanting to get the cleaning done so I could go back to my cabin and get ready to go into town for dinner, which was our weekly tradition. The guys decided they wanted to play kick the can instead. They were doing this for several minutes. I was not thinking about Mr. H, but I was thinking about the tongue lashing we would get from Mr. B if he caught us messing around. He was a kind man, but you did not want to get on his bad side. He had already grounded us from using the golf carts for a week because the guys had been joyriding them and had been rough with them. The camp felt very large when you had to walk everywhere in the midday heat of the deep south. Despite the guys not doing what they were supposed to do, I kept working. As I was sweeping the dirt from one of the bedrooms into the hallway where the guys were playing, I saw the glass door at the end of the hall slowly opening, as if it were being pushed open. The guys stopped and looked in the direction I was looking and watched as the door swung open as well. Then the door slammed shut. The door with the pneumatic closer, which made it supposedly impossible to slam. The clear glass door which had no one on either side of it. Finally, after processing what we had seen for a moment and looking out the door into the central hall to confirm that there was no one there, one of the guys finally spoke, his voice cracking as he did so, and he said, "Okay, sorry Mr. H, we'll get back to work." We finished the rest of the cleaning in a near record time after that. We all learned an important lesson that day. Don't tick off Mr. H. Camp always sounds like such a great time, except for, the murders and stuff that seem to happen according to horror films. But I don't know if camp is a thing in the UK and Ireland, but it wasn't for me when I was growing up. There was no kind of option to go to camp. I mean, we did go to the Gaeltacht, which I guess is quite similar, which was where you go for 3 weeks to an Irish-speaking part of the country and you speak exclusively in Irish and blah, blah. So I did have the Gaeltacht. But yeah, I always feel like camp sounds like such fun, both for workers and for kids that go to camp. Less fun when you've got a ghost, but I guess, keeping kind of young adults and teenagers and children on the straight and narrow, you're going to need some supernatural help. At some point, you're going to need that paranormal intervention. And I respect Mr. H being like, listen, we've got shit to do. I get it. You are young people. You want to play kick the can. You want to have a nice time. But there is also work to do. So I get Mr. H giving everybody a bit of a spook, a bit of a scare to be like, I am watching you. I can see you dicking around. You've got work to get done. Don't leave it all to Amy. Chop, chop. Let's get a move on. I respect it. I'm here for it. That's the kind of haunting that I am here for. And our final story today comes from Sam. I've always been interested in the paranormal, probably because growing up in a house where a man had passed away in one of the bedrooms before we bought it in the 1960s, there was always going to be a point of discussion as we grew older. I clearly remember when I was 7 years of age being told to vacate the kitchen and play in the rooms with my cousins. On this one occasion, we snuck up to the kitchen door and opened it ever so slowly, peeking inside. The room was dark, except for my elder brothers and cousins sitting at the table with a single candle burning in the middle of it. One of my brothers was asking someone if he was there and to communicate with them. We silently closed the door and walked away giggling, thinking how silly this all was. However, this confirmed to our young minds that something was indeed amiss, and we would have to wait until we were old enough to be privy to such discussions around the family group. I remember once when I asked my brother to take me to the toilet in the middle of the night. As we walked through the kitchen, I swear on my mother's grave, I saw a face right in front of me. It was of a Caucasian man with a big beard and messy hair. One wouldn't be too far wrong if you imagined a Santa Claus type figurehead. That would have been him. I said to my brother, "Did you see that?" "See what?" he answered. As it was only for the briefest of moments, he would have missed it, if he had his eyes closed at the time, sleepwalking me to the toilet. There was no poltergeist activity, but a lot of feeling that you were being watched wherever you went in the house. There was one occasion where I was a young adult of about 18 to 19 years of age. I was expecting a friend to come over and waiting for him in the lounge. This would have been about 10 p.m. at night. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black hooded figure just stare at me for about 20 seconds or so before I heard the kitchen door open and close. My stepmother asked who that was as she saw someone walk out of the kitchen as she was washing her clothes in the back wash house. I laughed and whispered to her that it was my friend trying to scare me. However, at the precise moment the kitchen door closed, there was a knock at the back door. You can imagine my blood pressure hitting the roof as there was my friend standing there, looking at me questioningly, knowing that something wasn't right. Bro, there's somebody in the house besides me and my stepmother. What? He said. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer and we made our way through the large 5-bedroom house we lived in. All of the bedroom windows were locked, so it was impossible for anyone to get in from the outside. It couldn't have been my mate because the back door was locked from the inside, and for him to be in 2 places at one time in an instant was impossible. Needless to say, he didn't stay long to watch the movie that night. He gapped it after 30 minutes, leaving me to solve the mystery. Fast forward 10 years and I now have a partner and a baby son. One night the partner and I had an argument and I was to go to bed without dinner, which she refused to make, and then wake up too late in the morning to make my breakfast. It was just one obstacle after another. Whilst I was working in the warehouse that morning, I was absolutely starving but too proud to ask any of the salesmen for a slice of their sandwich. I mean, I can hack it, right? But starving gave way to hunger pains, and right then and there I could have eaten a horse. Then I heard a voice, as clear as day and as crisp as I can hear everything as I type this. What are you hungry for? I swung around thinking someone had surely seen me holding my stomach. Was it one of the managers or salesmen? No, because I could see them all from my counter as they sat in their offices. It can't have been the other store man because he was off sick. It was just me, myself and I in that warehouse, alone. It wasn't in my mind either. It was verbally clear and spoke without an accent. It had a slightly deep monotone to it, and I would say it was a male in their 20s or 30s easy. So after gathering my thoughts together and realising there was someone else here talking to me from beyond, and obviously knowing my dilemma, I decided to test it. Back in the late 1980s, there weren't a lot of pizza shops around the Mount Eden area of Auckland, if at all. So this is what I asked my friend in my head. If you're real, then I would like a pizza, please. Content with the task given to this entity, knowing full well there was no way it could be met. Approximately 15 minutes later, the secretary came in and said, "Hey guys, I brought a large pizza for lunch, but I can only eat 2 pieces of it. I had to travel way out of this area just to get it, so dig in because I've had enough." The salesman and the 2 managers came out and had a look, but they had already brought their own lunch. "Hope you're hungry, Sam," they said. "Don't waste it." Honestly, I could have cried at that moment because it meant someone from beyond was looking out for me, no doubt about it. But I kept my composure and I walked down to the back of the warehouse where it was nice and quiet before I touched any of the pizza. Thank you so very, very much," I said to it verbally, and not in my mind before I went back to the counter and enjoyed the pizza. The last story took place approximately 2 months ago. I had installed security cameras throughout my property and could watch them from inner Auckland City where I currently work. One morning, about 1 o'clock, I get an activation on my front door camera. A prowler had come to snoop around the property. I panicked knowing my wife would be home soon as she finished at 1 o'clock and was only 7 minutes away. I called her phone but there wasn't any answer. She was going to meet this creep as she drove up the driveway. Shit. Suddenly our house alarm went into full activation with the sirens going off as loud as anything, scaring this dickhead off running down our driveway. I managed to get a hold of the missus who had decided to stop off at McDonald's on the way home, and I told her the drama that unfolded. She was both shocked and extremely thankful that she decided to have a snack after work by stopping off to get a bite to eat. When I arrived at home in the morning, I showed her the prowler footage from my phone. "You know what?" I said to her. "There is no doubt whatsoever in my mind that we are being looked after. because the passive infrared reflectors are only motion activated from inside the house, not the outside, meaning that anyone walking around outside would not trigger off the PIRs. So why did they activate at that precise moment the prowler showed up? She also said that she had never set the alarm when she left for work. It also pays to note that no, there was no breaking into the house, which would have set the sensors off upon entry. The house was untouched in that respect. One last thing, but I think it's prudent to add to the whole mystery here. We bought this house 12 years ago, coming from a place in Mount Eden where the street name is exactly the same name as our current one, except for one letter in the name change. There is a street directly across from us, 1 minute walk, where it has the same name as my wife's. At the end of the road is another street named after my mother, who is now deceased. And finally, there is a rest home 2 minutes drive from us, where it is named after a team I follow in the National Rugby League in Australia. I would say this house was meant to be ours, don't you think? Sam, I agree that house was meant to be yours. That feels like everything just sort of lined up. Do you know what I mean? That the universe lined up to be like, listen, this is a good idea. Take this house. It's very important. And it does sound like the house was really looking out for you. You know, that it was like, fuck, this guy is not getting in here. We're setting these sensors off. We're making sure that everybody is safe in this house. And that probably feels very comforting. Also, who gets a ghost that brings them pizza? 99.999% of people get ghosts that bring them fear, trauma, terror, sometimes an ambiguous message from the beyond. But no, Sam, no. You got pizza. I'm insanely jealous. Although in a way I do guess it balances out seeing the Santa Claus faced man and seeing the hooded figure in the house, you know, in your earlier years. So maybe that's what it's all about, like a cosmic karmic balance. And I'm going to say this, Sam, if you want to avoid pizza ghosts from now on, I mean, I wouldn't want to avoid pizza ghosts, to be honest. If there was an entity that could bring me pizza, I'd be all for it. Whatever else they were doing, setting things on fire, slamming drawers and presses and whatever, I'd be fine about it as long as they brought me pizza every now and then. However, I will say, if you want to avoid that going forward, learn to cook. Learn to cook your dinner. Easy peasy. Life is sorted. Thank you so much for listening to today's mini episode. Can you believe we're at 400 mini episodes? That's crazy. That's such a huge amount of mini episodes to have done. And that wouldn't be possible without you guys. You guys are the reason that mini episodes exist. You guys are the reason that I have been able to continue to make this amount of content all the time. And I appreciate it so much. Thank you for 400 mini episodes. Here is to 400 more. Thank you to Arlene, Shyra, Amy and Sam for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from October the 7th, 2024. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text. The long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever.